Welcome to episode 2 of Purvis Versus. One of the things I'll be doing with this podcast is to focus on specific themes which I feel are most relevant to the profession of massage therapy. I'll then do a series of episodes to explore those themes in more details. I'm going to do this through a combination of solo episodes, as well as interviews with people who I feel have important things to say. Now, my first theme is going to be on myth busting. So when I first started teaching, all I really did was bust myths because I could easily fill an entire day with the content. 2 days, a week, months even. Now, the more I learned, the more I realized that so much of the MSK world and the massage therapy profession in particular, it was just a big hoax. At least that's how I felt. The fact that there was research that was 20, 30 years old or even longer, which contradicted everything I had learned in school, and there was actually zero evidence to support massive portions of our educational curriculum, this was so mind-blowing to me. I felt compelled to speak honestly to anyone and everyone who would listen. Now, as a result of this, in my early days of teaching and advocating for change in the profession, I was actually threatened with legal action. I had people make formal complaints to my professional association by saying, if you don't stop saying these things, I'm going to report you to the CMTBC for professional misconduct. Now, thankfully, none of this ever went anywhere because these RMTs were threatened by science, and they didn't like how it felt to have their worldview challenged, which I can relate. I felt that way too. I did not like how I was feeling when the things that I was learning completely contradicted what I thought I knew. I can sit back and I can look at these things and reflect on them a bit more and realize that, I'm not angry. I'm actually sad that people feel this way or people had felt that way. And I'm sure people are still feeling this way now. Our profession has such great potential and an even greater unrealized potential to help so many people who are suffering. People that refuse to acknowledge that things could be better and that there might be problems in the way that we are educated and the way the continuing education system is run is not necessarily in the best interest of the profession, and more importantly, it's not in the best interest of the public. This failure to acknowledge that change is necessary is really negligence of the professional regulatory bodies and the associations and the stakeholders. Because if this profession of massage therapy, which I'm so passionate about, fails to adopt evidence-based principles into their curriculum and fails to change how they do their continuing education requirements, and there's no audit process really of what is valuable or defensible continuing education, then our profession is going to remain stagnant. Or in worst case scenario, in the regulated provinces, we could face deregulation. Or a big fear for all of us who this is how we earn our living is we might be removed as a benefit from extended health insurance plans. These are very real concerns and very real problems which could happen if we don't adapt, if we don't evolve, if we stay stuck in 1980s and 1990s beliefs and faith rather than trying to incorporate what it is that we do so well and incorporate the new science into that so we can be even better at what we do. Now, for many years, I felt like I was on a lonely island of skepticism. I was talking about these things with a work colleague and I was, reading stuff and I was talking with a few friends about these things, but no one really cared or really had much to share about it. At least that's how I felt. But then around 2015, I eventually met some like-minded colleagues in BC and Ontario, as well as a few colleagues in the US who I met at the San Diego Pain Summit, who were thinking and feeling very similar to me. Now, it was through our conversations and encouragement from them that inspired me to know that the journey I was on was what I always like to say is less wrong and was necessary to help elevate the standards of our profession so we could realize our potential. Now, it's encouraging to know that now in 2023, there's a new generation of therapists who are calling out the BS. Every day on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, I see new RMTs who are making videos and posts to educate any current or potential clients, but also to bring awareness to other RMTs that might be following them, that many of the beliefs and principles of massage therapy are based on faith and not on defensible science. So in this first episode of Mythbusting here, we're gonna meet Julie, who's an RMT in Winnipeg, Manitoba, who I connected with over Instagram. Now I reached out to her after seeing a bunch of her videos, and she had some great ones with titles like 4 Massage Therapy Myths That Need to Die. She did another video on encouraging people to burn their foam rollers and challenging RMTs about what they learned in massage school. So this is a great conversation that we had, and it's great to hear the perspective of a new RMT who is using social media as her communication platform of choice to educate and to challenge and to break down some of these myths which I feel and she feels as well are unhelpful to our profession. So please enjoy this episode, and when you are finished listening, please share this link on all your social media platforms. Well, hello, Julie. Thanks for being on my podcast today.
Yeah, no problem. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I
Very
appreciate
first
you.
podcast.
Yeah, very first podcast is exciting. Well, you're going to be addicted to them now. Once you get on these things and get to start talking, it's actually can be quite empowering, quite a lot of fun. So I appreciate you taking the time to be here today.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm excited to meet other people in the industry for sure.
Yeah, it's good. So how long have you been an RMT for?
I'm very new, only a little over a year actually.
Nice.
Yeah, it was July 2021 I started practicing.
Oh wow. Okay, I love that. I think that's really exciting. Having a healthy level of skepticism and already recognizing errors or incompleteness in our industry and in MSK care in general. To see that so early on is great. You have so much less unlearning to do.
Yeah, definitely. It was a challenging first year for sure, like unlearning all of that. And I think, but I mean, that'll be something that continues lifelong, hopefully. So, yeah, it's been good.
What happens is the more we learn, the more we realize we don't know, right? That's kind
Exactly. And that's how I've been feeling. So it's nice to talk to other people in the same kind of headspace with that.
Perfect. I love it. So yeah, I guess this is the first time we've really ever chatted. I reached out to you on Instagram a few weeks ago because I'd seen some of your videos, and your Instagram account is Lymph RMT. Is that correct?
The Lymph RMT. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, and so if anyone that's listening to this, check her out. You got a lot of great videos, a lot of fun ones. I like the one that you just posted today, which was basically an attack on. I should say an attack. It was
You can say an attack if you want to.
Yeah, why not? It's my podcast, right? If people don't want to listen to it.
Yeah.
An
exactly.
attack on the most common massage textbook. That was probably the Rattray book that you were on, or was it an outcome-based massage? It doesn't matter.
It was clinical massage therapy.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to keep that in there, but that
Sure,
was a textbook.
Yeah, it's a textbook. Yeah, I think that's the book by Rattray. That's an old school.
I think it might be. Yeah. I can double check if you want, but
no, I thought that was great because do you want to just briefly tell the audience what your post was about that we're talking about?
Sure. So basically, I made a post with a picture of the treatment outline for a hyperlordosis treatment. And in the textbooks, it says treatment should be applied once a week for 6 weeks. And I just thought it was interesting that if you look at the research, most new onset back pain will just get better by itself within 4 to 6 weeks. So I thought that was interesting and how timely and perfect for us, right?
Yeah, it's always funny. You do something and people get better, or you do nothing and they get better.
Exactly. Yeah.
I always say that. I always think that the hope is that at least if they come to see us, we know they're going to get better within this probably predictable timeline. But hopefully their journey to getting better will be
better,
less shitty. Yeah.
Less anxiety, and hopefully prevent them from getting into a cycle of chronicity or something like that.
The reason I reached out to you, because I'd seen these videos on Instagram, and I really was impressed by your boldness at kind of challenging some of these long held beliefs about massage and musculoskeletal therapy in general. But before we kind of dive into kind of your experience as a student and your experience in doing this stuff and your reasons for doing this stuff, just kind of tell us a little bit about Julie.
Sure. Awesome. I'll start from the very beginning, I guess. I grew up in New Brunswick, and that's where I first kind of got introduced to massage therapy very passively. It was actually a medium who said, "You're going to be a massage therapist." And I kind of took that with a grain of salt because I think at that time I was doing like social work or law or something. That was my end goal when I was in university. But And so I did a year of university there in New Brunswick, dropped out, moved to Montreal, ended up moving here with my partner, and here is where I went to massage therapy school.
And here is Winnipeg.
Here's Winnipeg. Yes,
Here's
that's
Winnipeg.
correct.
And so, and you were telling me before that you just started practicing in July of 2022, 21.
2021. Yeah. Yep.
Okay,
So very new. Yeah, part of the when I moved here, I had looked at massage therapy schools before actually moving, and I found the one that I went to, and I honestly I only looked at the one. There was 3 in our city, and I really liked the vibe of the place, and that was the one that I went with.
One thing I'd be curious to know is like what's the RMT culture like in Manitoba? Like, is it pretty mainstream or is it kind of fringe, or what's it like there?
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of variety here. I think there's a spectrum of people who graduated 30 years ago and are kind of just like doing their own thing, like with like Swedish or whatever, which is great. And then there's, I think from new grads, it's like assessment. That's the whole kind of vibe. And it's like, if you don't do a full 30-minute assessment, like you're a bad massage therapist. So there's a lot of that. There is a lot of more energy healing side of things. It's a wide spectrum. And I hear from people coming to see me that it's hard for them to find the massage therapist that they really resonate with, just because everybody is so different.
Which is good, right? I mean, I think that's one thing that's nice of the profession. You do want some differences, but yeah, this is what I always feel in all my years, kind of trying to advocate for change, is that yes, of course, you want different flavors, different types of people, but really the base of knowledge that we come from should be pretty standardized, and it's not, right? Because you got like energy healing to like hot like overemphasis on musculoskeletal assessment and everything in between. You're like, well, those are 2 extremes. Can we just like,
exactly. Is there somewhere we can meet in the middle and just help people out, like help their lives be a little bit easier for a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. That's what before we kind of get into talking and kind of about your myth busting and your kind of Instagram and your kind of motivations and goals for all the content that you put out, I'd just like to hear a little more about your recent experience as an RMT student.
Okay, sure. What do you want to know?
Yeah. So I guess the first thing was just tell me, like, what did you think about your schooling? An open-ended question.
Sure. I have wrestled a lot with how I felt about my schooling. I'm not going to name them because I don't want anything negative that I say to affect them poorly, because I do think they're doing their best with what they're supposed to be doing, So a lot of it was focused on correcting postural dysfunctions. That was the bulk of the course. So depending on how you feel about that, that's not so much what I do anymore. So I felt like I've strayed away from a lot of what I learned there. In terms of pain science, there were bits and pieces thrown in. There was never any like class where just like the significance of pain science and the biopsychosocial model was emphasized. I felt like it kind of showed up in all of our classes, but in little bits, and was never really put together as something that we could use with people. So for example, like in physiology, they taught us the gate theory of pain, which is great. And they taught us about the parasympathetic shift and how mental health can affect how your body's feeling. But there wasn't a lot of emphasis on it. It was just like, oh, by the way, this can affect things. But the core was postural dysfunctions for sure.
So you're looking to find some type of dysfunction or fault in the person, and then you'd do the appropriate treatment or intervention to correct said dysfunction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
and that's very common. I mean, that was like when I went to school over 20 years ago. I guess 20 years ago, almost exactly. It was the same thing. And so things happen.
Similar, yeah.
Very similar. It was all about how well can you palpate, what can you find, what can you correct, and every experience of pain was usually something that could be fixed if you could find the right technique or the right dysfunction, and all you had to do was be specific enough, and that was the thing.
And it's your job to fix it.
It's your job to
fix them. Yep.
Yeah. So I would say that your experience in school is probably very consistent with most people's. At
That's
least,
what I've heard
and,
for the most part. Yeah.
yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with um, there hasn't been enough of a change in the culture in the profession to really try and make that
Not
shift.
at all.
It's been small, and people like yourself are making a difference slowly. But I think it obviously needs to go more. What was interesting is what you did say though is that there was they did touch on some of the pain science stuff, and they kind of mentioned biopsychosocial. You mentioned the gate theory. Did they talk about anything else other than the gate theory when they're talking about pain science? Like, did they go into kind
Mm,
of the more current kind of some of the ideas about it?
I'm trying to remember. I'm like they taught us the anatomy of the nervous systems and how that all works, but and who knows, maybe I missed today, but it didn't seem to be like an overarching theme in the curriculum.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not surprising either. I mean, but it's always funny though if you think about it, right? The number one reason why people come to see us is because they hurt, they have pain,
Yeah.
and the one thing we learn the least about is pain.
That's such a good point, and it's so true.
Yeah, like you get touched on it, like you have your different modality
Yeah.
courses, and they're like, "Oh, for pain you do this. Oh, for pain you do this." But you're like, "But I want to understand pain because if I don't
But
understand
I
pain,
don't
how do?"
understand. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know what's happening with them, like
it's weird.
physiologically. Like, yeah, there wasn't much. Yeah, they didn't really talk about the processes of that. So yeah, that's probably been my biggest frustration with this first year of practicing was just reteaching myself basically how to do my job.
Yeah, 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 for sure.
Yeah, which I'm sure lots of people experience.
Oh, we all do. I think it's just
Yeah,
part of normal
yeah.
normal
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
practice or normal kind of professional development. Yeah, and that's the thing too is yeah, I don't expect anyone to like throw any specific students or teachers or
No, no, no.
schools under the bus because it's not about
Yeah.
bashing the system or bashing the stakeholders or whatever. It's just
Yeah.
about exploring like what's your experience like, and based on what you learned versus where you are now, and you reflect on, you think, yeah, there's gaps, which is really what it
Yeah.
says. Huge gaps for
Very
you.
important gaps. I found especially when it came to chronic pain, we the message about that was so they're just going to be maintenance. Like people who have chronic pain, they're just seeing you for maintenance. And there wasn't any talk of like how we can like reframe thoughts or like help them relate to their pain in a different way that might help them break out of that cycle briefly. Or yeah, there wasn't much talk of that. But yeah, I'm glad that I think social media is helping get that message across more clearly.
Oh, for sure. I would say social media. I mean, if someone wanted to
Huge.
do a PhD in pain science, you could probably just do it on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and you'd have all the papers.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how much information is out there. I think what
Yeah.
happens for some of us is we kind of get stuck on these little bubbles of like, oh, everybody must be thinking this way, and because the way
Mhm.
those algorithms work is they like you showed up as somebody that I should follow on Instagram, and some other people
Right.
I'm interviewing showed up because I don't know why there's certain things in our feeds that or certain connections there that it shows up, and so you get kind of mm, pigeonholed, I guess, in with these other people that are kind of thinking and saying the same things as you. So you feel everybody's doing
Definitely.
it, but then when you take the big zoom out approach, you realize, oh, that's not really the case. Actually, we're the minority still.
Yes,
We're a growing minority, but we're still small.
for sure. And that is a great point. I do intentionally follow some people who I don't totally agree with their views in the industry for that reason, just so I know what people might be coming to me with, like what they might have been told. And yeah,
That's really smart.
yeah. So
That's really smart.
yeah, it is very easy to get pigeonholed though.
Oh yeah,
And suddenly it's your whole feed or people that agree with you.
yeah, and you're stuck in that echo chamber. Where like, I'm amazing, I know everything, rather than
Yeah.
there's a couple people I follow, not on Instagram because they're like, I don't know, they don't have Instagram accounts, but I follow them on Twitter and on Facebook, and they definitely challenge what I like to be comfortable with, and I find it, yeah, same
Right.
thing, super useful because it makes you really check your own biases and reflect on, hmm, maybe I should think about this differently or reconceptualize what I'm saying or how I'm thinking because you know there's another opinion over here that could be less wrong than the one I have. It's really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the accounts that really kind of pushed me to start looking into things a little bit more was I'm going to butcher his last name, Aaron Kubal.
Oh yeah. Cool.
Kubal.
Yeah.
Yeah, him.
Yeah.
The first video I ever saw of his was um, I can't remember his exact wording, but it was I used to think the SOAS was really important, and here's why I no longer think that. And there was so much emphasis in school put on psoas, psoas, psoas. And so I watched that and my brain just shut off. I was like, hang on, what is that? And then I listened to it and I was like, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's been other people, physios, I follow a lot of physios who speak about pain science and that sort of thing. And I found that very, very helpful.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Aaron's great. Actually, I'm hoping to have him on. Not good. I'm
Oh,
hoping to
that'd be
have him
great.
as a guest. Yeah, because I want to. Obviously, I'm focusing on massage therapy because that's what
For
I do.
sure.
I want to have some other people that are not just people like
Yeah.
us who are really challenging a lot of those really
Yeah.
deeply held chiropractic
Yep.
narratives.
I think that's great because he is making pushes even in our industry, even though he's a chiropractor. So yeah,
For sure.
that's exciting.
Well, stay tuned, everybody. Hopefully they'll be on here. I know he's a busy guy.
Oh, definitely.
So when we talked, you said you learned a little bit about pain science, learned about biopsychosocial. Did the term or the topic of evidence-based practice ever show up in your schooling?
Um, yes, but I think they were referencing old research.
Okay.
So technically evidence-based, but no longer relevant. Like posture, like we got a lot of the tell people not to sit like bananas or their spine will curve, that sort of thing. So yes, but no. I don't know if
Not current.
yeah, not current evidence for sure. Yeah.
Did you guys have like a research course at all in school?
We did have a research course and I was very thankful for that. I went to school through COVID, so that course was online. Unfortunately, I think it would have been nice to be in person and do a little bit more. I found online schooling very difficult, so I think it would have been nicer if we could be in person, but obviously that wasn't possible for the time. But we did have a research course, yes.
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine what it would have been like going to school during the COVID times. It would have been so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got like 3 weeks of summer, I think, after our first year. And then we had to come back in and like catch up on clinic hours. And basically what we did was we did all of the theory stuff we could do online, but then we still had to go in and do practical because you can't learn massage therapy over a computer.
No.
So we did that. And yeah, exactly. Most of us made it through. Some didn't. That's they're doing their own thing now, but most of us made it through in one piece.
I'm assuming you have like do you have like a practice at a clinic right now, or do you work at your house, or?
Yeah, I'm at a clinic. I'm an independent contractor. My boss is amazing. Like I'll talk him up all day, every day. I think it's as close to being self-employed as I could be without running a clinic or running my own business. Yeah, and I don't plan to stay in Winnipeg forever, so I think I'm very happy with the setup I'm in right now.
That's great. What kind of support do you get from your owner, the guy that you work with or work for? Like, how does he feel when you like bring up you show him some of your videos or you talk about some of the evidence stuff? What's the response you get?
Yeah, I was talking to him about this last night actually. I had edited a reel that I knew was going to be controversial, but then I forgot to save it, so I didn't end up posting it. And I told him, I was like, "Oh, maybe it was for the best. Like maybe it wasn't ready, or maybe my Instagram wasn't ready for it." But and he's like, "Oh no, you're telling the truth." So he's very supportive with that. As far as I know he's going to listen to this. So John, if you disagree with me, feel free to reach out. We can have a chat. But no, I think he's very supportive.
Oh, okay, well that's good. That's good. Yeah, I think it's important to have those colleagues and people that are close to you to kind of reflect some of those ideas on, have discussions with them. And it's nice obviously if they agree, but sometimes it's nice if they don't agree because then you can practice your discussion skills. I always like to say discussion, not argument, because you're not necessarily trying to prove a point. You're just trying to be like, here's something to think about.
So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Sure.
Yeah. So I guess one thing you were saying, we were chatting about off air before, was the engagement you get from
right.
people on your stuff. Do you want to share or talk a bit more about how RMTs feel about what you post?
Definitely. So I haven't gotten a lot of backlash or any harsh criticisms, really. Some minor ones, but nothing that's like, no one's been like, you're completely wrong, that sort of thing. But I have kept my posts, in my opinion anyway, pretty tame from maybe what I might be posting in the future. I don't know. But because I want it to be palatable. I want people who have a different opinion to still be able to hear that without feeling attacked in what they're doing. So, but I have noticed less engagement from RMTs since I've started dipping my toe in the water a little bit with maybe more controversial content. So they're not saying anything directly, but that is something I've noticed. And maybe that's just Instagram's algorithm, hard to say, but that is, one thing I've noticed. Less comments, that sort of thing.
Right. But you're not getting anybody, private messaging you or like freaking out on on the comment threads about your stuff.
No, not yet anyway. The bigger the account gets, I'm anticipating it, but with time, that's okay when it happens.
Yeah, it'll probably happen.
Nothing crazy yet, though.
Sorry?
Nothing crazy yet, though.
Nothing crazy yet.
Been pretty, yeah.
Yeah, I would say probably one thing will happen is you'll do a video that you don't even expect, and it's going to go viral, and you're like, and you'll think, oh, geez, like I did not expect that kind of response, and there you go, and then it's going to go all over the place. So yeah.
Every time I hit post, is this the one? Is this the one that's really wants to start?
Yeah.
I've been lucky so far, though. Everyone's very nice, and if they disagree, they've been disagreeing quietly, which I'd like them to chat with me, but I don't know, maybe they're not that they have to, but
your videos are pretty kind, I guess. Like they're fun, but they're not overly like destroying anything specific.
No, because I think people, no matter what they're doing, massage therapists, our goal is to help people, and we're doing that in the way that we best know how, or that we were shown how to. So I can't fault any RMT for doing, like textbook treatments like we were taught in school, because that's what they were taught, Yeah,
and I think that's such a great point to make, Julie, too, is that, sometimes, we challenge, or maybe we're like, making fun at, some of the things we learn and stuff. But I guess if we can't expect that everybody's going to be where we are. Like each one of us is beaming like individually, like where I am, where you are, where other people are. Everyone's gonna be at a different stage of their personal, professional, life, and everyone has their own sets of knowledge and stuff. And I think it can become very difficult for people to. This is my experience, anyways. That when people are presented with a different narrative or with a different understanding about what they really hold true to them or tight to themselves. Once that is challenged, sometimes people feel like it's very personal attack on them, where it's the idea that's attacked, not the individual. So I think that's the thing is oftentimes what happens is when you're doing these things, you're attacking ideas, you're not attacking people. And even if someone has an idea, which may not be, what I always say is the term I like to use is defensible. It's not a defensible idea, but it's still what you were taught, right? So if that's what you're taught, then and that's how you practice, then you're doing the best you can, and you're doing what you think.
Exactly. So and I think when we take courses and when we go to school, we trust what we're being told, because we're humans, and our instinct is just to kind of trust the information that's being given to us. And like when I went to school, I assumed it was all updated research, because you're paying this institution to provide you with hopefully relevant knowledge. So no, and it's a whole other full-time job keeping up with research and updating your own knowledge. So I wouldn't blame anybody for not doing that. I just hope someday we can find a way to get the curriculums updated and stay updated.
Yeah. I think that's my goal. I mean, it's funny, when I published my first blog in 2016, and it was called something about time for a curriculum change for massage therapy. And it was basically like a call to action. And it's funny that 2016, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22. We're going on like 7 years now since that was published. Wow. And it's funny because that was the first blog I published. And I think that one was shared and discussed. And I had received so much feedback, some positive, some really negative. But it was interesting to see that when, that desire for change is still there amongst other RMTs. Like at the time, I felt like I was the only one. But other people I talk to all the time, like, why isn't the curriculum updated? Why isn't the curriculum updated? And I think, well, I know it's a huge job, but some of the stakeholders need to get on board and just do it.
I don't know who it is, but it's got to be somebody.
Well, I know I know, like, well, it depends. In unregulated provinces, I mean, it's really kind of up to the schools. The schools could do it if they want.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
I know in the
What
regulated
was
provinces, it's more difficult.
definitely what was the general reaction to that article that you published?
Generally, it was good, right? I think it was
Yeah.
good. I mean, there were some people that felt offended by it,
Right.
basically because I was challenging some of the kind of modality empire type belief stuff and the postural structural stuff. But I think most of the stuff I was really good. I think on my website, it might be the second or third most read blog still after all these years. So
Yeah.
it's
I
still
could see
pretty
why.
popular. Yeah, I should
Yeah.
probably share it again. I usually share it every couple
I'd
of
like
years.
to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll share it again. And
Okay.
yeah, it's good. It was positive. I think what happened though is funny. Back then, 6 7 years, nobody was talking in our industry. I should say no. Very very few people were talking about like terms like pain science or evidence based
Right.
practice or biopsychosocial. All these kind of buzzwords now. They
Hmm.
weren't really being talked about back then. And when they were being talked about, they were kind of being talked about, I'd say, incorrectly.
Right.
Pain science was often viewed as a modality, as something you did. You pain science somebody. If you did pain science, if you were talking about pain science, it was all about explaining pain, just like
Oh, okay.
so just like pain vomit, which I
Right.
think it's oftentimes how it came across, but that wasn't the intention.
No.
Biopsychosocial was supposed to be more of this like holistic, looking at the whole person, but it was often, back then, at least the way I experienced it, it was often talked about in bio, psycho, social, like these three distinct domains rather than a
Right.
domain where it's like a big soup pot, we're all mixed together. Evidence-based practice was often talked about back then about uh, like research. It just had to be
Hmm.
research. But evidence-based practice actually also involves your clinical experience and most relevant research and the person's own unique context. And so
Exactly.
the terms were just starting to be used, but they were really misinterpreted, misunderstood. And I know for myself too, during my learning journey, like I if I look back, I was like, yeah, I didn't really understand them fully. And even now I still, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. So
Hmm.
the
Yeah,
reaction was
I would
good,
agree with you.
but
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I understand them fully, if we're being completely honest. Like I haven't taken any specific courses on them. I'm just kind of doing my own digging and doing the best I can with that. Um, I think it was interesting that part you said about how they kind of you motioned. You can't see that, all of you listening because it's a podcast, but he kind of motioned when you said bio, like there was like a box that's bio, and then psycho as another box and social. And it's almost like for clinicians, it's really hard to see people as individuals and like a gray zone of all of those things rather than just putting them into more boxes. It just almost reminded me of like we're looking for other like postural dysfunctions to fix. It's like, oh, their bio's off, we gotta fix that. It seems like it sounded like that's what you were saying, like we were almost going in that direction.
Yeah, 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 and I think what happened too initially is, yeah. So you're looking for the bio thing, and then if the bio didn't work, then it was like, oh well, maybe just they're thinking about it wrong.
Right.
Maybe they've got bad ideas in their head about pain. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm air quoting that is like bad ideas, meaning like a lot of negative thoughts, beliefs, feelings, fears, catastrophization about their pain was seen
Yeah.
as these like psychosocial things, and they're like, okay, then the intervention was we just got to change their thoughts, and so that's where the pain splaining stuff kind of came on.
Right.
And then I think people realized that, oh wait, that doesn't work either, because it's still too linear, it's still too narrow. You're trying to change someone's thoughts, beliefs, fears, ideas through education. But what if they do think differently about it and they still hurt?
Mm-hmm. Then
Then
what?
then you're blaming their thoughts, you're blaming their mind, you're blaming their
Yeah.
consciousness for their pain rather than blaming their low back. And what's more
Which is
problematic, I
almost
would say,
worse.
yeah, I would say it's worse, right? It's way
Yeah.
worse to it. Well, you're thinking wrong.
Yeah.
You just got to think differently, and
Yeah, exactly.
so a lot of the negativity that happens, I think, because of the pain science stuff, or was happening, it might be getting a bit better now. I don't know. Was tended to be the misunderstanding of it.
No doubt. I would say a personal goal that I've been working on the past couple months is saying less to my patients because I've definitely been guilty of spewing pain science. And especially when I first graduated, I was very like assessment, we got to fix your spine, all that stuff. And I've people seem to like it when I say less. about pain science and all that sort of thing. So that's what I've been doing and working on, and finding ways just to listen to them, because they'll tell you what they need a lot of the time.
Brilliant. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would say that a lot of us, and myself included, would, when you realize that when you say less, you actually do more.
Exactly. Who would have thought?
One of my favorite quotes is a Winnie the Pooh quote, which is doing nothing is the best of best. Doing nothing is the best way of doing something. Something like that. There's a quote. Anyway,
Yeah,
I love it. It's like just basically doing nothing is better. And I like
it's
that.
amazing. And you know what? It makes my job a lot less stressful now that I know I don't have to put someone's vertebrae back in place with my hands.
It's so empowering,
I
right?
love my job so much more now. Yeah,
Totally.
yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, it's funny, right? When the more you learn, you realize the less that you have to do specifically. So it's complex
Exactly.
information, but when you understand it,
Hmm.
it actually makes your job easier because you can just
So much easier.
explore and be curious and try some different things and see what works on this person on this day. And it kind
Definitely.
of gives you more. I think gives you more options, which is great.
Yeah, I would agree. Um, I find it interesting with different people that come in, because some people really resonate with that and they like when I'm flexible and I'll say, we can try this. I'm not sure how it's going to go. They really like that. And they're like, thank you for being honest. And they're very appreciative of that. But then there's other people that have been seeing, I'm just going to use this as an example. No hate to chiros, but they've been seeing their chiropractor for 20 years to put their hip back in. And then they come and see me and we start talking, and I go into that exploratory state, and they're like, it's just immediate no, like it's almost rejection. um yeah, so it's interesting how different people will respond differently to different things. They're individuals.
Yeah,
And not a set of symptoms.
exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's really, really great to hear you being somebody who is relatively new to the profession to understand that, yeah, every person that comes to see you is going to be different.
Hmm.
So the treatment for them is going to be different. And some people maybe want that exploratory, some people maybe want that very specific thing because that's what
Yeah,
they've been told. And even though you think that's bullshit, for them, maybe that's what they need that day. And as long as they're not suffering, then is that right or wrong?
exactly. And if part of that's been hard for me to wrap my head around in this journey, um if they think it's going to be effective, it'll be more effective than something they think won't be effective. So yeah, there's a fine line to walk there as well.
For sure. Yeah, and there's some cool
Yeah,
research actually on that where they've looked at people that, what kind of treatments they prefer, and then if they get that
right.
treatment, their outcomes are better than if they got
Exactly.
something else. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Let me talk about another
Yeah.
podcast and talk about some of that research on patient preference because it really is what it comes down to.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, definitely.
it's on my list of things to maybe explore. We'll see.
Yeah,
So the list is
cool.
huge. My brain has got so many things in it.
You could
Trying
go forever. Yeah.
Yeah, which is good. I was talking to a woman the other day who's a business colleague who's going to help me out with some of this stuff, and she was saying that she's like, well, like how often do you want to do your podcast? And I was like, she's like, do you have like a time frame? I'm like, I have enough content here that I could do this probably release an episode every week for like 3 years.
Right.
She's like, oh my gosh, she's like, that's a lot. And I was like, well,
It is a
there's
lot.
a
There's
lot
a
of
lot
stuff
to
to
talk
talk
about.
about. Lots of stuff to talk
Yeah.
about. To see if I can
Lots
keep
of
up.
different. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, kind of talking about your journey into the skepticism and into the myth busting. Was there like a specific moment or an event or something that happened where you're like, this doesn't make sense anymore?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. There was a few that stand out more than others, but it kind of started in school, actually. And unfortunately, it manifested more as imposter syndrome when we were like doing palpations for like ERS and FRS. I was like, I can't feel anything. Or like with certain special tests, like feeling like sacral rotations and stuff, I was like, I can't feel anything. I don't see anything. So I kept very quiet about it because I thought it was me, unfortunately. So that was one. That's kind of where it started. And then when I started getting into clinical work, I was noticing, obviously, nobody was coming in as like the picture perfect textbook example of what they were experiencing, of course. So there was that, but then also when I was like applying these treatments that I was supposed to be applying for their specific dysfunction, it didn't really matter what I did. Like in terms of treatment, like with specific, like if I missed, because I'm new, right? I'm going to forget things. If I forgot to treat a specific tissue, um, it didn't matter. They still felt better after. So that made me go, interesting. Okay. And then I took lymphatic drainage level 1. And they talked very briefly. It wasn't even like a main point of the course, but they talked about how the lymphatic system deals with inflammation. Like it will process inflammation in your body. And then it was just like, inflammation causes pain. Massage therapy sometimes can cause inflammation depending on the techniques. And I was like, okay, whoa, like that's something's going on here. And then I found Aaron, and then it just kind of spiraled from there, I'd say.
Yeah. Most people, there is an event or a series of events where things just don't add up and they don't make sense.
Definitely. So, yeah. Specifically, it was sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No.
Okay. Specifically, it was the inflammation piece, because I remember in massage therapy, there was a lot of talk about how inflammation is bad and can cause a whole bunch of different like ailments and stuff. But then other techniques we were doing, they're like, this causes inflammation, but like good inflammation. And I'm like, what? You're contradicting yourself. Like, what does that mean? So, that piece really, I almost left massage therapy, if I'm being completely honest. Like, it was a real catalyst moment for me. I almost went back to university this fall because I didn't know how I could do this job and be honest to people. But thankfully I figured it out and it's going well now. I'm back on track. But it was really difficult to navigate for sure.
Yeah, and that's funny that you make that you made that association, right? Because we understand the neuroscience, right? We know that inflammation sensitizes nociceptors, which transmit noxious stimuli and blah blah blah. And more that's going on, then the more likelihood we are to experience pain.
Yeah.
But how is your body supposed to differentiate between good inflammation and bad inflammation? It doesn't make any sense. But that is a belief, that's a myth that's perpetuated. And probably most people that you went to school with may not have thought about that. They might have been like, oh yeah, there's good inflammation, bad inflammation. Like a lot of people aren't going to put those pieces together. So that's interesting that you were able to do that.
Yeah, I had a really good instructor for lymphatic drainage level 1.
Yeah. And they put the pieces together for you.
Definitely. I remember I was sitting in the class and it was only like a 4-day course. Like it was an intense 4 days, but it was one day we were just kind of chatting and she was just explaining like the basics of lymphology so we can explain that to our patients. And she was talking about that and I was like, wait, doesn't massage cause inflammation sometimes and she was like, and you could see she had kind of like gone down the same thought path and was like, yes, it does. Isn't that interesting? So I'm very thankful that I took that course.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And then the thing is too, right? So once you get rid of, or once you, let's say once you get rid of the inflammatory or inflammation kind of narrative, it really changes, I think, how people treat, because you realize, okay, if this person's in pain, say it's an acute injury or whatever, or there's, and then there might be some inflammation there. Maybe some of it's in the surface, so we can see maybe some of it's, in deeper structures, and we can't see that. It doesn't make any sense to go in there and piss it off anymore, because what we're going to do is we're going to add more inflammation to an already inflamed area, which is going to make it more sore.
Exactly.
It's logically, it makes no sense.
It doesn't. If you actually think about it for 2 seconds, you're like, no, it's contradictory. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, that feels really good to hear other people say that. Sometimes I feel like exploring this side of our industry is very isolating, even though there is other people talking about it still. There's lots of people that are not, and I know aren't super crazy about it. So it feels really good to hear that from other people.
Oh yeah, no, you're not alone, Julie. There's just not enough of us, but you're not.
No, I know I'm not alone. I just don't get to talk about it very much. So this is good.
There you go. This is another platform. Hopefully this podcast will be shared widely. And that's actually one reason why I wanted to do the podcast, is because it's social media. Not everybody's on social media. Not everybody reads blogs. but it seems like, if you have enough content and it's similar on enough platforms, you'll hear more people will hear your voice or hear your message.
Yeah.
Hopefully this one
Yeah.
will be people will listen to this and be like, oh, I need to learn more about that. That doesn't make sense to me either.
That would be really cool. Yeah. Yeah. And it's okay if it doesn't make sense. I feel like that's not encouraged enough. Like the general sentiment I got from people was, this is how you do things. And if you question it, then you're not doing your job. Like, this is how you do your job, like this very specific, rigid set of rules. So yeah, I hope we can encourage people and let them know it's okay if they're having questions. And I have lots of new grads in my DMs being like, what's going on? I'm like, it's okay. Do what you can, like that's my message. Like, don't freak out. It's okay. You'll figure out your groove in time. But
yeah, that's great. Well, it's great that people feel comfortable enough to reach out to you as well. It means that you're not threatening. Maybe you're like, oh, look, she's saying some stuff which I don't understand, but let me reach out to her and see if I can find out more.
I try not to be threatening. Yeah. I know. Yeah, people are really they hold their jobs close to them and they see it as part of their identity. So if you're coming for their beliefs, like you said before, like it almost feels like you're coming for their identity and something that they identify with really strongly. So it can feel personal, even though it's not.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point that you made there. Is that it's not personal. It's not an attack on an individual. It's just the thing that's really important is for people to understand that no one is ever disputing your outcomes. If you're doing things with somebody and people are getting better, then no one's ever saying it's useless. No one's ever saying that's garbage. No one's ever saying you're a bad therapist. But maybe the rationale or reason for why you got those outcomes is the thing that's under dispute or isn't maybe defensible. And also, when you realize that some of those things that you think or say in a certain subset of the population, that could potentially make them feel worse or lead them along a path of more disability than they need. And that's the most important thing, is to realize that, hey, we all make mistakes. No one's intending to, but if you're kind of working from the incorrect narrative, you might be making people feel worse.
Which isn't what they want.
No.
Yeah, I don't think there's any massage therapist that wants to make people feel worse. So yeah, my hope is that people can just stay open, and I hope that we can just help people upgrade language. Yeah, and like you said, the narrative that we're telling people.
Yeah, that's super important. That's my bias, anyways. That's kind of the most important thing is changing the stories, because once we change our story, it changes like how we think. It's going to impact what we say, which is going to impact what we do, and that's going to impact how people feel. I would stand behind that statement forever, unless someone could tell me I'm wrong. But I've never had anybody tell me that. So,
no.
So
I did have somebody say to me, it was a conversation I was having with some colleagues, and I told them that same story I told you. I was like, it didn't seem to matter what I did. People still felt better after. And they were like, but for how long? Like, that's the question I always get. It's like, but for how long do they feel better? It's like, well, how long do your people feel better for? It's varied, So that was, I guess, that reminded me of the little bit of backlash I've gotten. Yeah, their assumption is my clients aren't going to feel as good for as long as their clients, because I'm not doing a 30-minute assessment anymore necessarily.
Right. You're not as specific, narrowing in the spot. Yeah. So therefore you're not as good.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny that you said that thing about doing something wrong or treating the wrong side or whatever. People still got better. And early in my career, I was really heavily involved, really into fascia and structural integration. And I was like, that's what I need to do. And that's the ticket. That's the magic technique. And some people got better and some people didn't. But I remember taking some courses, and they were very, very, very specific about how you had to assess and move. And I remember being thinking I could feel stuff, but I was like, is that just my mind? Am I just pretending I'm feeling like I don't, or everyone else looks like they're doing it and they can get it, so maybe I gotta pretend to, and you kind of you kind of fake it. But I remember people coming into clinic and doing treatments on them and following the completely wrong protocol that we looked at the course, and sometimes they got better and sometimes they didn't.
Yeah.
And it starts to not make sense. I don't really understand. Like I
No,
treated the wrong
exactly.
side, or I went the wrong direction, or I pulled the wrong way, and they still felt better. And that was,
Hmm.
when you think back, you think, oh, it's because I didn't really understand how manual therapy actually impacts, the neuroimmune system and how all the stuff functions.
Yeah,
That knowledge was incomplete. So, anyways, it's
exactly.
it's interesting when we think about our journey
It
into
is.
being skeptical.
Yeah, and it's too bad because manual therapy, I think, is so beneficial and so valuable, just not for the reasons that we're telling people it is.
Yeah,
So there's lots of benefit to it. I just I wish we could, um, yeah, spread the truth about it
yeah.
more than just yeah.
Yeah, there is a lot of actually some really interesting research out there on like the power of touch, but yeah, it's none of it has to do with the specific tissues and things. It's all about these kind of bigger effects, contextual effects, and the
Right.
connection and how like certain receptors respond to pressure, and it's pretty
Hmm.
neat.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it is
we'll
very
we'll
neat.
talk. I'll talk about that in another podcast. I think I'll probably go into some of that manual therapy research stuff.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So one thing I was thinking about too, I was wanted to curious about is obviously you use your platform predominantly for kind of challenging long held beliefs and stuff.
Yeah.
Why do you think that's important? Like, who's your intended audience for? Is it other RMTs or is it patients, clients?
I think it's both, which an Instagram strategy coach probably wouldn't recommend. So I've spent time thinking about that. Like, who do I actually want to target? And I think it's both because I have like some of my patients on there and I have other RMTs that follow me. So I think I'm trying to make it as accessible for as many people as possible. Like, for whoever wants to listen, I want them to be able to understand what I'm talking about so that for patients specifically, so that when they're looking for a practitioner, they know a little bit more about what they're looking for. Or if they're getting told by a practitioner, it's like, you're going to have back pain forever, maybe they already know that's not necessarily true, that sort of thing. And for RMTs, I guess, I wish I don't know if I had a solid reason for why I was doing it, more other than I was annoyed that it wasn't more talked about. Um, and that kind of gave me a platform where I felt like I wasn't immediately being interrupted with backlash. Yeah. Or
Okay.
maybe I would get backlash, but they'd have to listen to the post and read everything I had to say first before they, yeah, made their
Right.
comments.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. How often do you post? Do you try and do once a week or a couple times a week?
Oh, it fluctuates a lot. I'm not the most consistent for sure. I would love to do 3 times a week. It ends up being some days I'll go 5 days in a row and then I won't post for 2 weeks, which again, an Instagram strategy coach probably wouldn't recommend. But I'm not trying to get like a huge following. Um, if it happens, it happens. It's people are finding it gradually, but um, yeah, it differs. It differs on the week.
I think a
Yeah.
slow organic growth is probably better, healthier anyway, rather than
Yeah.
explosive
Um,
growth right away.
yeah, there's definitely been times. I don't know how some of those accounts that post like multiple times a day, I don't know how they do it. I sometimes feel myself getting a little bit burnt out by it. And so I take a step back, but I can't even imagine if I was lining myself up to post 3 times a day. It's
It's a
just,
lot.
oh, it's a lot. It's a whole other job.
Oh yeah.
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 Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
When you're in, if you think about like if you want to do things other than like your massage practice,
Hmm.
all this other stuff is probably just as time consuming, if not more time consuming.
I would say more.
And you're thinking about it all the time too, right?
All the time, all the time. Yeah, which is fun. Like I do enjoy doing it. But when I'm not enjoying it, that's when I kind of put it on the burner for a week or so, and then I think about something that I want to post, and then I'll do it again. So it stays enjoyable for me. And if it ever got to the point where I took a break and I still wasn't enjoying it, I would probably stop. Yeah, because
Yeah, I like what the point you said. You said you did it because you were annoyed, and that's so common for a lot of us. And I remember for me when I
yeah,
first wrote my first blog, and it was because I was annoyed. And when I first started
I was
teaching
just so annoyed.
courses, I was
Yeah,
just annoyed. I was like, how come nobody else knows this information? Like, am I the one that doesn't know anything? Like, maybe I'm the one that's wrong. But and
exactly.
you
Yeah.
get you feel kind of annoyed, and so that kind of internal struggle of
Mhm.
there's this knowledge, but no one knows it. And why don't I know it? I got to find a way to get this out. And then so
Yeah.
everyone has a kind of their own strategy to get that out there. But it usually
Yep.
comes from a frustration.
Very much so. I felt like I was imploding before I started doing it. So it's been a really great outlet for me. And it's introduced me to other people, and even it's given me more knowledge like through the people I've met. So it's been all in all more positive than negative for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's
Yeah,
great. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it should be positive, right? I mean, otherwise, what's the point of doing it? Mm.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I felt it yeah, other RMTs would always say like to new grads, like you can reach out like if you have questions and stuff. But anytime I did, it felt like I was just being brought back to the curriculum.
Oh,
So yeah, yeah. Or they would say things like, I get the sense that a lot of RMTs feel this way, but they don't know what to do with it. So then they like fall on what they know. So I had people say things to me like, yeah, well, not everyone's going to present that way, and just do what you can. So they would say things like that to me, which is good, but didn't really help with that sense of like, we're missing a piece, and that's just because I don't think they had that piece either, and they could tell something was off as well. But yeah, I think a lot of RMTs feel that way.
you're probably right. I would agree with
Yeah.
that. The
Yeah.
knowledge translation piece is the hardest thing. Is that there's all this information, and things maybe don't add up. But how do I translate that information into something that I do in my practice when I have a live human right here in front of me that's needs my help? What do I do with that
Yep.
information? I'm not really sure, so I'm just going to go back to what I know, and
Yep.
that's the hardest part. And I know from my own journey that was very difficult to be, how do I use this information? And it took me years
Hmm.
and years, and you're like I said, you're always trying to be less wrong, of
Yeah.
trying to to use this information in a way that is helpful and not just furthering outdated ideas or thoughts.
Exactly. Yeah, I really hope to take your course someday, actually, on like applying clinical knowledge.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
it's on my list
oh.
of courses to take.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I have lots of courses available, so if you reach out if you have any questions with them. Happy to do that.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess we've been going here for a while, which is good. We don't want to go too long because I don't know. Sometimes when people are listening to podcasts, I don't think they go too long. People just
They could
finish.
go forever.
They
I
go
could talk about
forever,
this
right?
all
So
day. So yeah,
yeah,
cut me off at some point.
yeah, which is great. This has been a really easy conversation, so I appreciate you being here. But I guess the one thing, just kind of a couple questions before we finish off, and you don't have to rush through this, but of the myths that you bust, the myths that you talk about on your Instagram page, what do you feel are the ones that are most important for RMTs to to understand?
Yeah, that's a good one. Probably the one that I come back to every day in my clinical practice is trying to show people that they're not broken, and being very careful with my language so I don't communicate to them that something is perpetually wrong with them. I'd say that is huge and almost counterintuitive to the schooling a lot of us receive, because we are trained to look for something that's wrong with the person, tell them what's wrong with them, and say, I'm going to fix you. So figuring out how to navigate that and making people, or not making people feel like they're broken, I guess I'd say, is one of the most important. Like you can make an argument for any of them, but that one comes up a lot for me.
Yeah, I think that's very powerful. Be letting people know that they're okay
Yeah.
and that pain is normal.
Yeah, exactly.
We all hurt. We all know what pain is because we've all experienced it.
Everybody,
Yeah,
all of us. Yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of great quotes and stuff and things I've read over the years and papers on it, and a lot of the stuff that really comes back to in musculoskeletal medicine. One of the biggest problems is that we've medicalized normalcy.
Yes. Yes. I saw an article on that recently, actually. I
Yeah.
was like, I had never had a term for it before.
Mhm.
There was another one, pathology. Yeah, they use the word pathologizing as well, pathologizing normalcy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. Humans are varied. We um, present in varied ways, and everyone has their own life and experiences, and how they relate to their pain is going to be different, but everybody has pain, like you said. That's the one commonality we can find. And I don't think people know that enough, because people don't talk about their pain, because it's almost seen as like it's shameful, like something's wrong with them. I don't want people to know I'm struggling. So I think our world is getting more vulnerable as well. So I think that'll shift things as well down the road, like 50 years down the road or so, estimation. But yeah.
No, I love that, Julie. And I think we'll leave it at there. I think that's a great way to finish it, is basically let people know they're not broken.
You're not broken.
Put out the content out there. I'll keep liking it. I'm gonna go through your page and see if I can share some of the stuff.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Some of the links there, and hopefully people will follow you, and will start to maybe reach out to you or ask you questions, and maybe you'll I'm sure you will already have changed people's lives, clients, as well as other RMTs that follow you. So it's great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is awesome.
Yeah. Well, thanks. And we will talk to you soon.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe so you can be notified of future episodes. Purvis Versus is available on all the major podcast directories. If you enjoyed this episode, please share on your socials. If you'd like to connect with me, I can be reached through my website, which is ericpurvis.com. That's ERICPURVES.com. Or send me a DM through either Facebook and Instagram. I can be reached there at Eric Purvis RMT.